The Man in Line with Andy Wint.
Faster, my good afternoon. Welcome to Manx Radio's Man in Line, Friday lunchtime. So, did you hear the news then? Appeals against more than 300 new homes being built in Braddan have been dismissed. Planning permission has now been given for the development. Hertford Homes first submitted the application in 2022 on the land between Braddan School and Douglas Rugby Club. 320 new homes, a nursery, a primary school and a neighbourhood centre. Big. 2 appeals were submitted against the plans, including Braddan commissioners who objected against it, raising a number of concerns about traffic and air quality. It was premature in advance of the forthcoming strategic plan. Landscape and loss of agricultural land, wildlife, the design, the ability to register with the local GP practice, flooding, drainage, primary schools, vehicular access via Braddan Bridge as well, whether the water drainage system will cope with the development, the active travel strategy. Well, that was it. However, it's going to happen. Hertford Homes have gotten that permission, so it's just a matter of time before 300 new homes built in Braddan. Any thoughts on that? Text, email, call and WhatsApp. And the revised pay offer has been issued to public sector workers, further negotiations, so it looks like that offer is going to be put forward, and we'll see what happens with that. Yesterday, a lot of questions about obviously the wind farm that's going to happen, whether or not it's going to be however many turbines, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 turbines, how big they're going to be. And again, we're obviously going to own them, but we're going to have to pay to have them put in. So the arrangements regarding maintenance, something that we have to know, and how much is it going to cost? And also regarding assisted dying, many people still opinion divided on the assisted dying, the proposed assisted dying legislation that is forthcoming from Dr. Allinson's private members bill. And also twinning with Dublin. Douglas City Council apparently are now intent on twinning with the City of Dublin. Already it's twinned with Ballymoney in Northern Ireland. So a note in from Paul, who said on 715, twinning with Dublin, no regular boat to Ireland. It's madcap. Are we twinning with Dublin to take advantage of what they have there, says Paul W. What do they have, Paul? Call and tell me what they have. Howard's first with us today. Hi, Howard.
Hello, Andy. I suppose they're well aware of it, but this new house has been built in Braddan. That's up above the Portashee rugby field, isn't it? I think, and goes through to round to the back of the school, and I think it's up to the cemetery. But many years ago, if you go into the entrance to go into the rugby club, and halfway along that little track, you would turn off left and you go up above, and that was a council tip. And I've tipped stuff up there years and years and years ago. And I was just thinking there, if they start digging and all this stuff has been under there, it must be there for 50 years, so it'll be well gone, a lot of it. But what about leachate? Has anybody thought about leachate into the surrounding area?
Well, you would assume, Howard, that obviously this is going to cost a fortune. There's a lot of capital going into this, so presumably they figured it out. Well,
sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Even where you think of opposite the NSC, that was covered over the soil and made into football fields, but that was also a tip. Between Grove Road and up to Spring Valley, that was all part of a town council tip. But I know there was just about everything went in that one at Braddan. Cars, various vehicles.
Yeah.
as I say, the time when John Morley took over the Empress, he just said, right, start at the top and throw everything out. And he cleaned the place right from top to bottom. And
so whereabouts specifically, Howard? So obviously on Ballafletcher Road, there's a cemetery. Going down towards Tremode, there's that Tremode village down there. Mm-hmm. So where's the entrance to the tip on Ballafletcher Road, or was it from?
It was from the rugby fields bottom, where you're going through the gates and you would drive through to where the rugby club is.
Right.
Before, halfway between the gates coming off the main road and the rugby club was an entrance, and you climbed uphill onto this in amongst the trees.
So did they build, I mean, those rugby fields aren't that, sorry, which rugby, are we talking about Douglas Rugby Club? Are we talking about Douglas Rugby Club, not Vagabonds at the other end?
Well, it's Portashee Meadow.
Yeah.
Should we take it where the rugby fields are?
So you go down that very long and windy single track road to the rugby club.
Yeah, and before you get to the rugby club, or maybe just before, they used to bear off up amongst the trees. There was a road up there you could drive wagons up.
Right.
And I don't know whether it's still there. I haven't been down there for ages. But I've been there with wagons and dumped all sorts, mattresses, beds, just about everything went into there. So it's been decomposing for years, and I don't even know it's fully covered or anything like that. But to put houses on them, you'd be digging down, you'd be putting drains in, you'd be disturbing whatever's there, and the leachate would have to come out somewhere.
Well, presumably, has that been going into the River Glass for all this time then?
Well, it will have been, yes. Into both sides of the river, wherever the springs were, there's the River Glass and the Dew on the other side of it. So that leachate would have been, over the years, slowly getting into the river or into the grounds. The farm that used to be there in the middle of that, between that and Tremode Road, there was a little farmhouse there, and it was, I can remember this, you can smile now, but that's where the cross-country used to be for Ballacameen. We used to run from Ballacameen down through the river at Quarterbridge, right round that field and back out, and there was a very marshy area in the middle. Yeah. And that is probably where the leachate, then, that was just a normal marsh area, but that's where leachate could have gone into, where that farmhouse is in the middle. I don't say it's going to be a problem, but it's worthwhile thinking about.
Well, it may not be a problem, it's certainly an issue.
Yes. And they've taken extra caution now for everything else, where they're taking residue from Peel Harbour and everywhere else, and they're having to put that into special built pits where the leachate is controlled. Now this here, like every other tip on the island, even when you come down to the railway bridge at Keweg, bottom of Keweg, there used to be a council tip down there. They're all covered over the soil and just nature's taken over. But that's the top. That's what we see. And it's what's happening underneath us. Could be, not a serious problem, but something worth thinking about.
Okay, all right, appreciate that.
Just going back to your Ballymoney and Dublin and whatnot. It may seem a supposition, but what would Douglas Council thinking about when they're going to twin with Dublin? Now, Dublin is part of the EU. And there are a lot of the people over there, the riots and everything, because of these asylum seekers coming to Dublin. Now, would the council here have thoughts in their minds of letting some of these asylum seekers come to the island?
Well, I mean, I don't know whether they have or not, but I mean, that wouldn't work anyway, because, they have to have permission to come here, surely.
Well, when they're in Ireland and in England and whatnot, they come ashore, they go in, they're provided with various items, but they're allowed to wander around. And a lot of them, it has been said, are working for these industries where they Deliveroo and Let's Eat and all this, that and the other, because they have a system whereby if you're doing the deliveries, you can pass it to me, and I'll pay you so much for you doing what's supposed to be your job. Now, this is an industry that's building up in England, and the riots is going on in Dublin and places. They've actually got a People's Army now forming within the Irish Southern Ireland because of the distraction of these asylum seekers that are coming in from the EU, and they have no say over it. They've just got to take them. Mm-hmm. Are they going to be allowed to move to the Isle of Man? And, we're having a struggle getting to a doctor and to a hospital and everything else, and if we get a lot of these people coming in, it's going to decimate our services.
I'm sure all the councillors of Douglas City Council have thought this through, Howard.
Aye, but there's thinking it through and there's sensibly thinking it through. There's two different systems there.
Okay.
And that's what makes me worried.
All right. Thanks, Howard.
Okay. Bye now.
Good to hear from you. Here's a note in from Yvette who said, I'd just like to say Manxcare should let psychiatrists and social workers let them write support letters for medicinal cannabis. It's illegal for them to do this at the moment. I'm under psychiatrists. Medicinal cannabis really helps people with mental health problems and others. It's a great cure because it's natural. I wonder whether Teresa Cope would change this and let psychiatrists and social workers write support letters for people with mental health issues. Also, the sooner it gets onto the Manx NHS, the better, because some people don't have the money to pay for private prescriptions. Eddie's on now. Hi, Eddie.
Hey, Andy. Okay, mate.
Very good, thanks.
Good. Listening to the announcement that planning permission has been granted. There's an awful lot of people out here that knew this was going to happen, and we are, again, very suspicious that this is just lining up, that the next thing you'll get is the one in Ramsey will get permission and so on. Health and safety out of the window, and they'll just be granting everything because early next year the MUA are going to put in planning permission, and they'll say, oh, well, everything else is getting granted, so you'll get the permission as well. It's health and safety out the door and every concern going out the door. That's our prediction.
There's a bit of difference, though, isn't there, between residential developments and wind turbines?
No. Howard hit the nail on the head. What about the existing land that's been there? There's been a tip there, so health and safety should come in. There is where's all the people going to go to the doctors? Where's all the people going to go to the infrastructure that's around there now? It's just going to overwhelm it. So they don't really care. What they want to do is set an example that we are very good. We grant a lot of planning permission, and the next thing will be the big one, the MUA. And it's just obvious to a lot of people out here that we've got 2 new people in there as well. So something's going to happen, isn't it? That's our prediction anyway. Thought I'd let you know, Andy. We've been predicting it for a while.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Eddie.
See you, mate.
All right, good to hear from you. Look at that time, 19 minutes past 12. Can anybody explain to me why the Manx media is giving so much airtime to Paul Burgess as WhatsApper 806 and falsely describing him as a leading client scientist when he's nothing of the sort, apparently? He's an engineer with a speciality in water who has some very questionable associations. That's Steve's opinion, by the way. The climate change denial lobby is obviously being very effective in spreading false information once again. That's Steve's opinion. There are no current plans to offer medicinal cannabis on the NHS and the Isle of Man. Since 2022, Carson's Pharmacy in Onkens held a licence for dispensing cannabis-based products to patients with private prescriptions as part of this pilot scheme that's going on. Now the DHSC is inviting businesses to submit applications for new licences. new licences. This is Laurie Hooper, MHK.
So the idea really when we launched the pilot scheme in the first instance was to see if this would work for us on the island. The intention was always to try and broaden access if it was a good idea. The pilot scheme seemed to work really well. We didn't identify any particular issues with the way things were working. So the next logical step was to open the scheme really to allow other pharmacies to apply for licences if they want one.
Now this pilot scheme has been up and running for a while. More than 650 patients have been using it. What feedback have you had?
So it's been mixed, actually, and as part of the review we did into the pilot scheme, we looked into some of the feedback that we'd had. Overwhelmingly, I think people felt it was a positive thing. It was a really good service to have and a really good service they were getting. We did have questions around things like pricing, as you'd expect, and with a pilot scheme, obviously it's going to be a slightly higher cost, I think, than when you have a competitive marketplace. And so one of the reasons for opening the scheme up to allow other pharmacies to apply for a license if they want one is that hopefully then you'll see some competition in the market, and hopefully that will help bring prices down, which ultimately is going to be better for patients.
There is clearly some demand for this. What would it take for it to be available to NHS patients?
So the challenge with CVPM is always, at the moment at least, that the medicines themselves are not approved by NICE, so they haven't gone through that rigorous kind of cost effectiveness testing process, and that's kind of what stops us being able to offer them on the NHS. Ultimately, what we try and do on the NHS is offer medicines that we know are cost effective, that have gone through that rigorous process, and that actually we can hold our hands up and say these are definitely value for money. When it comes to medicinal cannabis, it hasn't gone through those same processes, and so it's much harder for us to justify funding something like that on the NHS when we really should be funding other things such as nice TAs, for example, that are drugs that we currently don't necessarily fund on the Isle of Man that we know would be better for patients that we are trying to roll out. So unfortunately, for the moment at least, and until that situation around the registration and the licensing changes, it is going to have to remain a private prescription on the island. When
could we see more of these pharmacies joining the scheme?
If any pharmacies do decide to come forward, they will just go through a standard kind of licensing process in the same way that we do for registering, say, a new nursery or a new pharmacy or anything else that we regulate in the department. So it should be a relatively smooth process, I'd like to think, from a pharmacy deciding they'd like to do this, reaching out to the department, making the application, and then just going through a standard kind of licensing program.
Laurie Hooper, MHK. Any thoughts on this as far as you're concerned? Do you think the availability of medicinal cannabis will be beneficial, particularly on the NHS? As that lady said, it's expensive currently, and a lot of people simply can't afford to buy it. Have the steam packet issued any statement yet as to what, if anything, this is Terry Kay says, what, if anything, the new landing stage at Liverpool will be used for in the winter once Manannan ceases her summer schedule? Is the Manxman going to be sailing to Liverpool? Obviously, she can't discharge any freight there, so it's going to be passengers only, and she'll be facing upstream as well. That's a big boat to be facing upstream, particularly if there's an ebb tide, as there is twice a day on the Mersey. But we haven't heard yet, really. Is Manxman going to be sailing? What is the timetable? What planet are the planners on? And our government living? The government needs to be looking after the people in the infrastructure that's here now. We are paying our taxes for this, says Texter 785. Well, the stated plan is to bring 15,000 more people to the Isle of Man, to get a settled population of 100,000 on the Isle of Man. That's the plan. That's what the government's stated aim is. Obviously, with 100,000 people on the Isle of Man, there will be a lot more financial activity and presumably a lot more affluence, a lot more money for everybody. That's the plan, to get more people working here, to get more people living on the Isle of Man. Part of it is they have to live somewhere. So obviously this new 320-odd home development at Braddan is part of it. The other one, of course, is that application for 150 new houses in the north of the Isle of Man, at Hartford Homes, again at Vollum Fields in Ramsey. 153 new homes, mix of terrace, semi-detached and bungalows, 114 open market, 38 affordable, and approval in principle for a primary school. Now remember, there was a report a wee while ago that said we should be closing down 8 primary schools. So where does all this sit? If you've got any thoughts on it, I mean, obviously you may have a thought one way or the other whether or not we need big housing estates. There's been, the ginormous housing estate that's in Ballasalla now. There's going to be another one now at Braddan, and obviously one proposed for Ramsey. But, I mean, short of that, if you're not going to have sprawling housing estates, the only other way is to put up tower blocks. Tower blocks on the Isle of Man. Now, what's the biggest tower block? St Paul's Square in Ramsey, isn't it? There are small tower blocks, but I'm talking about big ones. The ones, if you've been to Jersey, they have in Jersey. That's the reason they get 100,000 people on an island that's about 5 miles by 4 miles. So, if we don't want housing estates, would you accept tower blocks? Looking at the plans, says Peter, for 350 homes at Braddan, there's a contingency to run a road through to the small estate opposite the old test centre, and there's a parcel of land next to the cemetery to be retained by Braddan Church for future expansion of the cemetery. One big problem is the main access to the estate just up from the Braddan oak tree, says Peter. I'm sure they've thought about the whole thing. Hartford Homes, obviously a reputable company, they know their stuff, and this has been in the offing now for 5 years and more. Douglas Council applied to be a city, says Andy, and it cost the ratepayers just a couple of thousands, but everybody else has picked up the 110,000 in other costs. So what are the other costs possible for twinning with Dublin, says Andy? And do you think it's a good thing, by the way? I mean, Dublin's a great city, it's a very vibrant city. Is it good that it's going to be associated with the Isle of Man? As a business, the Manx Utilities, says G on 313, must do forecasts of future income. So they tell us... So they should tell us how much per kilowatt hour our cheap electricity will be post wind turbines. Well, standard rate is 29 odd p per kilowatt hour. So, well, you would have thought they'd be working that out. So, what's happening after the survey asking for opinions on the rules about paying for nursing care? I haven't heard a thing, although I took ages filling it in. Is it back in the long grass? Says H on 768. Did you fill that out? By the way, tomorrow and Sunday, it's the Port Erin Festival of the Sea. The Manx Radio team are going to be there. So if you're up to nothing tomorrow, and even if you are up to something, nip along to Port Erin. They're going to be there. Manx Wildlife Trust are going there with a huge display of sea creatures. So if you want to see the Manx Radio team, they'd love to see your face in the place tomorrow in Port Erin, Saturday and Sunday. If the gentleman, says Ian, who left the message on your answer phone regarding police recruitment is correct, surely this is a concern. If we can't recruit Manx police officers to deal with Manx issues rather than drafting in police from outside the Isle of Man, who'll cost more and aren't always in tune with Manx life, says Ian. Well, there's a long tradition of officers coming from across. Our chief constables from across. We've had chief constables from across. I think only Gary Roberts was the only Manx one we've had for a long time. But do you think that's that much of an issue for police officers coming from across, or do you think we really need to put a career path in for youngsters on the Isle of Man who want to be police officers on the Isle of Man? Is that something that we should be doing? Thanks also to Viv, who dropped a note in and said, you mentioned a while ago about those gangs on Snapchat and Telegram selling vapes and tobacco to minors. I haven't heard more of that. I think Manx Radio should warn parents about this and ask if the police are aware. So Snapchat and Telegram, gangs on there selling vapes and tobacco. And cannabis as well. Cannabis can often be a gateway drug. So that's something that's very concerning. Are the police aware of this? And there are an increasing number of gangs selling vapes to minors who will charge extra for profit. it's a worrying trend, and particularly, I don't know if you're a parent or a guardian, certainly a lot of young people are choosing to vape, whether or not it's a lifelong habit or just something that will, just come and go, and you hope it'll just come and go, but we'll see. But if you got any more information on that, I'd really appreciate it. There was a comment, says Carrie, about TT Marshall's concessions. I don't know about priority booking on the Steam packet. We always book early, so we don't need priority booking. However, Carrie says Marshalls can claim a travel expenses rebate. Marshalls who travel to the Isle of Man by the Steam packet for both the TT and MGP may be eligible for a rebate. To qualify, you must sign on and attend a minimum number of 3 sessions at the TT and 3 sessions at the MGP in the same year. Is that true? Right, let's get to the lines again. And Robert's with us now. Hi, Robert.
Hi, how you doing? I was just thinking, I'm on Douglas Promenade. I'm seeing everyone's got gambling addiction on their phone with Bitcoin. I've got this image in my head. I mean, I play Born to be Wild every so often, which is a bit of a sideways. But in terms of like the image I want to give, there's an image in Las Vegas of this man who's having a cigarette and neon lights on the side of a casino. That's a gambler. You gambling your life away if you use Bitcoin and things like that. I know it's a get-rich-quick scheme and all the rest of it, but it's a gambler that you're messing with. So I just disagree with the premise of it, to be honest with you. I know a lot of people don't want to hear that.
Have you ever been involved in Bitcoin?
I have a caveat on it in terms of like what I've done with Bitcoin, but I just think that it's not necessary. Really, it's something that needs to be eradicated.
I mean, do you think it'll be eradicated? Robert, it's a bit late now. I mean, cryptocurrency has been around for what now, 10, 15 years?
So's AI, but is that necessary either?
Well,
you really want to give your information to all the things? If you look at Microsoft, they pull out as observers from AI because they think it's not necessary. I read in the Times yesterday that I think it's Oracle and Microsoft have pulled out of as observers, or people who've looked at it. So I think AI and Bitcoin, they're nice to haves, but really are they necessary? And that's what I wanted to say. I'm sorry about that. But
not at all. No, more than happy to. Thanks for that, Robert. Good to hear from you.
All right, have a good day. Bye.
All right, good to you. And if anybody's in Bitcoin, today's value, I think 44,127p. £44,127.27p. I think the peak was earlier on this year, 55,000 or so. Bitcoin, I don't know about you. Are you involved in cryptocurrency, Ethereum, or anything like that? Lots of people are. The authorities don't like it, don't like cryptocurrency because they can't control it. I mean, banks are supposed to be getting involved in it, but that's another story. That's Robert's view on gambling, Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, and associated things. Here's David on now. Hi, David.
Hi, mate. You're tongue-in-cheek. We're going to twin with... Has the Isle of Man ever twinned with anybody? And could I suggest we do Switzerland and give a free ticket to the guy who had the Manx flag to the final, which is going to happen on Saturday, isn't it? And get him at the front, waving the flag.
Oh, the final's on Sunday, 8 o'clock on Sunday.
Sunday. What did I say? Is that the...
Yeah.
Oh, I'm doing a Trump.
So, no, I think no. I mean, Douglas has twinned with Ballymoney. I don't think is anywhere else on the island twinned with anywhere.
Well, I'm not quite sure. I've got a feeling at the back of my mind, something to do with the local authority in Kirk Micha, was Nepal.
Oh, yes, they were. That's right, because they're the sign saying Namaste, didn't they?
The head teacher there. But is there anything stopping us? I mean, maybe or your listeners, or the Isle of Man listeners on Manx Radio, could actually come up with something that will be useful. And my tongue-in-cheek one, if they can't get the useful, let's twin with the professional guy in Switzerland and say, could he be our ambassador?
All right, okay. All right, have a good weekend. Thanks for calling.
Did you give him any Manx knobs yet?
Thank you. Cheers there. Any thoughts? It's true. Where was Kirk Micha twinned with? Is it still twinned with somewhere in Nepal? If you're in Kirk Michael, have a look, take a photo, tell me all about it. Text, email, and call and WhatsApp. I've got an abacus that Robert can have, says Des. Whether or not you can turn back the tide with AI, it's a bit late, but I was listening to the chap about the corporation with Howard, wondered if the corporation could change the name of Drinkwater Street Lane into something else. Oh, well, thank you. Yes, thank you, John. Good to hear from you. You need to report that properly. Thank you, John. If the vapes being sold via Snapchat are laced with drugs, so not just your average vape. The Northern Police Unit are aware of this, but nothing's happened yet, says 230. When you get into drugs, of course, the moment you get into drugs, you're in criminality. No comeback, no rules, no sanction. So at the moment, whenever anybody gets into drugs, you're dealing with criminals. It may be social. People might like a crafty joint every now and again. But remember, at the end of that deal that you have with cannabis are some vicious savages, criminals, who wouldn't hesitate to end your life. So is the idea then to legalize cannabis? So it's going to be sold licensed, retail, and again, come back to the question. If cannabis is to be sold, if it is to be legalized, this is recreational cannabis I'm talking about, spliffs, joints. If that's going to be sold legally, who's going to sell it? In your mind's eye, where would you see it being sold? Is it going to be sold at chemists? Is it going to be sold in health food shops or in normal shops? It's a serious question. I go back to 50 odd years ago. I happened to be living in Luxembourg and knew somebody who worked for a large American cigarette corporation. And he said in the 1970s they had trademarked a name for retail cannabis cigarettes. They were called Marleys, as in Bob Marley. So this has been in the planning for 50 odd years. Is that the way to do it? Do we legalize recreational cannabis and cut the criminals out, or do you think they'd still be there? Did the Kirk Michael is twinned with Nepal, the whole of Nepal, and what does it do for Kirk Michael, says Nikki. If you're in Kirk Michael, do you feel a glow of pride knowing that you're twinned with Nepal? What does Nepal get out of it? That's what I'd like to know.
Hey, I'm Peter Hickman, and I just want to wish everybody at Max Radio a mega happy birthday.
Oh, Chester, it was so easy selling all those old valuables all in one go with Vintage Cash Cow. Join over 500,000 people turning watches, jewellery, cameras, gold, silver and much more into cash. Send your items to Vintage Cash Cow, fully insured with free postage. Accept the offer and enjoy the money, or we'll return your items for free. We can go on holiday now, Chester. Visit vintagecashcow.co.uk.
Go al fresco in style with the Lifestyle Furniture Garden and Outdoor Collection. Discover our hand-picked range of gorgeous corner, dining, lounge and bistro sets, plus outdoor bars and fire pits, all with free delivery island-wide. For truly great outdoors, browse online at lifestylefurnitureplus.com or explore the garden and outdoor marquee at our main showroom, Snuggford Trading Estate, Union Mills. Lifestyle Furniture. It's everything your garden's been waiting for.
At Isle of Man Energy, we're excited to offer our customers the Alpha E-Tech efficient hybrid gas boiler and heat pump combination. This state-of-the-art hybrid boiler causes minimal disruption to your existing heating system, making it simple to upgrade. Priced from just £65 a month and with 6-year warranty as standard, which can be extended to 10 years, what are you waiting for? Register for a free consultation at isleofmanenergy.im.
Construction waste today.
Tells recycle for another day.
A builder skip or two.
Tells skips will bring to you.
Need quality Type 1 stone for your building or contracting job? Then contact Tells with no minimum order for collection or delivery. Call 677 137. Visit Tells Limited in Snugborough or find Tells Limited on Facebook.
Skips are what they do.
We're the guys that hire one to you.
Call Tells Skips today.
677 137.
Controversial climate scientist Paul Burgess has made several claims based on his interpretation of climate science, which conflict significantly from the general consensus reached by climate scientists who say we need to act swiftly if we are to avoid our climate becoming so extreme that we will be unable to live in it. Mr. Burgess refutes this consensus, but on Perspective this Sunday at 12 noon on Manx Radio, Adrian Cowan and Ralph Peake join me, Phil Gorn, to challenge Mr. Burgess's position. Are we all about to bake in a hotter climate? Can renewables reduce our energy bills? Lots of questions, but who do you believe?
The Man in Line with Andy Wint.
20-1, as a note in from Lottie, who said, there's no cruise ships in Douglas Harbour. When's the next one in? I'm just checking. Visit Isle of Man. I got a rundown of where they are. Next Thursday, 18th of July, Seabourn Cruises Seabourn Sojourn is in Douglas Bay next Thursday. Next Friday, the 19th, Viking Cruises Viking Saturn will be with us. So next Thursday and Friday, we've got cruise liners in Douglas Bay. And Juan's on now. Hi, Juan.
Well, more importantly, Andy, is Penny back on the road yet?
Well, we don't know. And apparently it's a Ford Transit, for a big Ford Transit Luton.
Now, is Penny off with COVID? This is the thing.
Well, we don't know. Nobody sent a photo of Penny in for ages, so I think we should have Penny spotting.
Now, you were on dangerous ground last week there because you called Penny a she. Now there was an argument there. It said there was a rental, but in the end, they said she was a tranny. So I don't know. You're on dangerous ground there, Andy, calling her a she if she's a tranny.
Penny is a they.
It's a they transit. It's a they transit. So just a few points there on the population, and also touching on that 14-storey building that they're looking at putting up in central Douglas. That's going to set a bit of a standard if that actually goes through as to the future of how they're wanting Douglas to look. I mean, 14 stories is quite a large building.
I'm trying to think, what's the tallest building in Douglas? It's the new apartments on Peel Road.
Yeah, I think, where is it, 7 or 8 stories, I think, is the tallest that we have at the moment. So 14, when you look at it, and it's the first thing that hits you coming off the boat because you're looking right at it. So I'm wondering, once these things go up, it sets a standard for where we're heading. And I thought there was an issue some while ago with the fire service that they couldn't service anything above 8 stories. So they would have to get new equipment, I think, to service anything taller than that as well.
They'll get a longer ladder.
A longer ladder. Yeah, health and safety, Andy, can't have that. But I look at the problems and the logistics of traffic already on the Peel Road and such places. Would it not be better? And I agree that the population's got to go up to a certain extent for shops and retail to survive. But to 15,000 is quite a lot. Now, we have got quite a lot of land compared to Guernsey and Jersey. But would it not be better to build a brand new town? Like you've got a lot of area, say, at the north of the island in Derby, a lot of exposed area there. And I believe when the prison was built, all drainage was put in anyway for future building.
Well, and obviously the RAF took care of a lot of that in 1938, including water provision. You know, they linked to the little reservoir in the hills. So the RAF's done a lot of the work, and perhaps Derby is the next place to, build 300 or 400 houses at Derby.
And that would be my thought, to put a new town, basically, somewhere like Derby. It would give the commissioners there more income as well. You've got Tesco's down in the north of the island. It would take the pressure away from Douglas a little bit. And you have a lot of land down there, but I believe that there was a lot of drainage work done, and like you say, the base work was done many years ago. So I would have thought that that would have been a better situation to look at. And then just touching on your texter that texted in before, or email, reference to Paul Burgess. And as far as I see from Paul Burgess, I mean, everyone keeps going on and trying to decry him and say that he's not qualified. But as far as I can see, what Paul Burgess is actually giving out is other people's facts and figures from actual proper websites that are dealing with wind turbines. And he's actually just sitting there with a calculator and adding all these figures up that these people are producing and saying, this kind of doesn't work out in the maths. It doesn't work out. He's not making these figures up. So regardless of the qualification, he's not making these figures up. Now, I believe you've got John Curtis on the programme shortly.
He will, yes. John will be on, I think, in August.
And what qualifications John Curtis got?
I'll ask him when he comes.
Well, there we go. But as far as I can see from John Curtis is a salesman. Because, the question was asked, was it 2 years ago now, when we asked him about 59 wind turbines that was on his website going down through the middle of the island, which corresponds with talk the other day that he was saying, how many wind turbines are we going to have and what size are they? And John Curtis denied that. But these people are salesmen. Paul Burgess hasn't really got a dog in the race here. He's an elderly gentleman, 79 years old, who's been in and around the business for a long time, saying, hey, these figures don't knit up. They don't come together.
You see, in the middle of this, everybody seems to have their own facts. Everybody seems to have an opinion. And we have people who are kind of, arguing amongst themselves. Some people believe it, some people don't believe it, and in the middle are the customers, because remember, at the customers, just keep in your mind 29p per kilowatt hour. This is going to cost money. Now, is it going to save us money in the long run, or is it going to cost us money in the long run, really? Because in the end, we will get the bill. We will, the government, whatever the cost is, they will send us a love letter in the form of a tax bill. We're going to have to pay for this. So everybody surely needs to have as many facts as possible, and it will be nice to take the heat out of it and we have more light.
And this is what I said some time ago. An on-the-floor debate. And I mean, the last one that you had on the Man in Line there, a lot of time got wasted because it got personal between Paul and Lamara, and it wasted a lot of time on personalities, and we never got really to the bottom of it. But a proper debate. We keep going on about referendums and such like at the moment, but this is the future of the Manx people, and I say, if we get this wrong, there's no money to fix this one. And the people that go on about the oil industry being corrupted, 150% agree, but it's the same people that's behind the electric industry. All they're doing is swapping hats. The whole carbon credits issue is the biggest rip-off money take ever. I mean, the American government are $34 trillion in debt, and they've got to park that somewhere. So they're going to introduce carbon credits just to park this vehicle somewhere of $34 trillion because they can't handle it.
And nobody's mentioned Kroger gas lately. That's gone very quiet.
And this is the thing, we talked about the drilling and the geoengineering here. And I still think that would work. I mean, listening to, and I've spoke to drilling people, and they're saying it's far more advanced now than what it was before. It's not a case of if it'll work, it's a case of how deep you have to drill. And I do think, like you said before, Andy, there's no money in that because that's our own natural energy coming out of the ground. Once that's harnessed, we would be an affluent island with no one would be holding to us, and maybe that's the problem.
So, I mean, Ewan, do you think then, if some people have, let's just say, if somebody's got a different opinion to you, okay, and if they're in that business, as you say, there may be people who are in the wind turbine business or other businesses, I mean, does that necessarily negate their opinion just because they're in the business, they're making money from it, they're taking the salary from it? I mean, they may be right.
And this is the thing. I mean, I sit down with as many people as I can to try and get to the bottom of it because, like you said, you need to live here and you want the best for the island and energy-wise. I mean, I've sat down with people from Extinction Rebellion. I've sat down with all sorts of people and tried to talk and listen to all sides of it. But I tend to find that the people who are trying to push this through at the moment don't want to sit down and listen. They put their fingers in their ears when sudden the other side starts talking and they just want to listen to their own narrative and nothing else. And that's kind of worrying because, we should sit down with an open debate in the Villa Marina, have some sensible people on both sides. You can sit in the middle, Andy. You're a good moderator. You can sit in the middle there and keep control of it. And let the people listen to both sides of it openly and get their own opinion, because at the moment we're not getting that. It's just getting fog and haze, and everyone's changing the goalposts. Someone like Paul Burgess comes along and gives these figures. These are not right, and then no, but we changed the goalposts. We're not doing it like that anymore.
Okay, all right.
So let's get some facts on the table. Let's have a big old meeting in the People's Hall at the Villa.
All right, thanks, Ewan. Good to hear from you. Here's a note in from Texter 237. Derby's a lovely part of the Isle of Man, never-ending coastline, views of the hills and the mountain, fantastic sunsets, and 5 or 10 minutes drive to Ballaugh, Andres and Sulby. So it's ripe for development, says Texter 230. Actually, a couple of weeks ago, I went to that exhibition that was at Derby Church, all about the RAF. It was a fascinating exhibition. So I took the chance to walk around. There were a few of us. We walked around the parade ground at Derby. Do you know, it's almost in perfect condition. Somebody has kept all the weeds off the parade ground in Derby for years. I mean, when did the RAF pull out? In the 70s? So that parade ground, if you can tell me who's done that, who's kept the weeds from the Derby parade ground, I'd like to know. But a lot of the infrastructure's in there for development at Derby. Who knows? It could be the next big place. Sammy's on now. Hi, Sammy.
Good afternoon, Andy. How are you?
Very well. And yourself?
Good in parts, thanks. Good in parts. Thanks. I'd like to put forward a couple of suggestions, please. Now, whatever your opinions are, and we're all allowed opinions. Now, William Shakespeare wasn't qualified, was he? How many degrees in writing plays and stagecraft did?
I don't think they had degrees in those days.
Yes, and there weren't very many schools down in those days. And also, now, Mr. Burgess may not be qualified in exactly what he's espousing, putting across, but he has made some very good points, and there are good points on both sides of the argument. So perhaps it would be a good idea to maybe have a suggestion of a parade a big a discussion in the Villa Marina. Say we come round and.
What do you think, Sammy? Do you think we should have wind turbines?
Possibly. I think it'd be better out at sea, really, because I'm not sure. I mean, there was that thing that William Woolard did years ago with the ducks, the amphibious wave power generators.
Yeah.
But I don't know that much about them. And then there's green power, yes, but what happens when they come to be used? There's no method of disposing. Just get each individual blade down and bury it in a huge long piss.
Well, in the end, we're going to have to pay for it, Sammy. Yeah. Somebody's going to have to pay the electricity bill, and it's normally us.
Yes. So. Now, there's people. Now, basically, business has the opinion. Essentially, we've got to make it as much money as we want to, and that's not one of my lines, but. And there's always, we've got democracy this side of the world, got business this side of the world. So, and it's a big bonkers, crazy world. So, why not just have a sensible discussion between people who know what they're on about and listen to everyone in all sides?
I agree, Sammy. That's what we. That's a good place to end the week on. We should all have a sensible discussion.
Thank you. Rather than getting heated and burning anyone to say because they said something we may disagree on, we can talk and discuss to each other. Nice, sensible.
Good boy. Thanks for that, Sammy. We appreciate that.
Thanks. Best wishes. Have a nice weekend.
Oh, good to hear from you. Thanks for that. Before 1 o'clock, by the way, after Man in Line, we're going back into the archives, our 60th anniversary archive, and a voice from the past on Manx Radio is on Manx Radio for many years, Chris Musk. Chris Musk is on Manx Radio talking to Helen Shimmin, who was Miss Isle of Man. They used to have beauty queens, you know that, don't you? Miss Isle of Man. She was the entrant at that year's Miss World competition. It's 1977. Chris Musk in 1977 talking to Miss Isle of Man, Helen Shimmin. Maybe we'll see you tomorrow or Sunday at Port Erin with the Manx Radio travelling crew. Remember, next week, Jed Power is on. Jed Power, the hospitality professional. Lots to chew over regarding hospitality, tourism on the Isle of Man. How do we treat our visitors? Do we get enough? Do we do enough with them when they're here? How do we sell the Isle of Man? Any thoughts on that? Text, email, call WhatsApp on Tuesday, or call the answer phone on 682-631. In the meantime, email maninline@manxradio.com. Have a great weekend. Thanks to Chris on the phones.
WINT. 60 years serving you as the nation station. This is Manx Radio.
First, let me say it was a different era. So regard this interview in 1977 between Chris Musk and the Miss Isle of Man entrant in the Miss World contest as of historic interest. Helen Sherman was obviously pleased as punch to be there.
I came over for some shopping to get some of my clothes for the contest. I only stayed for 2 days, and the only place I actually saw was Trafalgar Square.
So, as the Ireland representative, you obviously meet up to about 88 different nationalities here, or however many find their way to competing at the Royal Albert Hall. So far, which countries in particular have you met?
Well, I'm sharing my room with Miss Ireland, Lorraine. I'm friendly with Miss Gibraltar. His name is Lourdes. I don't know how to pronounce it. Something like that. And I've met a lot of the girls. I can't remember all their names.
You were talking affectionately of Miss Canada, Miss Philippines, and I think it was Miss Philippines who came second in the year that Marjorie Wallace won the title for America.
Yes, well, she was one of the first girls I actually met, Miss Philippines.
I'm looking very keenly here in the darkness with the power cut, I'm afraid, as is happening a lot in London, at your vital statistics. They look to me, Helen, and looking at you at the same time, 34, 24, 35, is that correct?
That's right, yes.
Mm-hmm. And for those of the listeners who are on the mainland, in what we call the Greater Manx Radio listening area, we'd like to ask you if you could sort of give a few more personal details about your height and eyes and so forth.
Well, my eyes are blue-grey, I would say. I'd like them to be blue, but they're not.
Mm-hmm. Colour of your hair?
My hair is blonde. I'm 5'7".
And what are your ambitions? Should you, in fact, whether you win or not win, what would you aspire to do within, say, the next 2 or 3 years? Would you travel the world, or do you have other ideas up your sleeve?
No, I would like to see the world. You know, if I was in the position to, I'd definitely take it.
Mm-hmm. Very quickly, what is your background back home? What have you been doing since leaving school?
I work for an advertising agency in Douglas. In fact, I worked at the gas company in Douglas for 2 years, and then I went to the advertising agency. I'm very happy there, and it's a really marvellous job.
You're looking in fit, fine and well form, and all it leaves me to say at this moment in time is we wish you well. Helen Sherman, we hope you have a super Miss World contest.
Thank you. Bye.
Part of Island life for 60 years. This is your Manx Radio.
Radio Caroline North broadcast from the MV Caroline in Ramsey Bay from 1964 to 1968. And across the first weekend in August, Ramsey's back in the 60s with vintage vehicles and live 60s music. And on Saturday, the second and evening of the illustrated history of Caroline North and South with historians Andy Wint and Ray Clark, when the original Caroline Bell will be displayed. Tickets for the evening are £10, available at manxradio.com, and all proceeds go to support the Ross Revenge Dry Dog Appeal charity. The Caroline North weekend is August the 2nd to 4th with Radio Caroline, Live at Home and Manx Radio.